Where's that hecking on button? Ooh, I found it! Let's play! Good evening everybody, Loke here with a one-shot opinion video, but a bit of a special one, because this week we will be talking about the Freedom of Form Foundation, a foundation founded to fund and popularise scientific research that enables freedom of one's physical form, and something that's a bit more controversial than just your transitioning from male to female and female to male. Yes, it's to do with the Furry Fandom and Transhumanism, and incorporating the two with science to achieve this as a physical form. If that doesn't fascinate you, I don't know what will, because I'm an aspiring scientist myself. I'm an undergraduate biochemist, and I keep my eye on medicine and technology and developments in medicine and technology. And when this came across in my Twitter feed, yeah, I didn't really know what to say. But what I will say is that we're going to be using the word transhumanism a lot, so we're going to need a definition for it. And in that case, Google can help us out here. So, transhumanism is the belief or theory that the human race can evolve beyond its current physical and mental limitations, especially by means of science and technology, with this term being popularised in the 60s, and especially so in the early 2000s. It's also an international philosophical movement that advocates for the transformation of the human condition by developing and making widely available sophisticated technologies to greatly enhance human intellect and physiology. So, yes, I'm going to be putting this site and all relevant links in the description below, because I'm not going to be able to do it justice. There's a lot here. What I'm going to be talking about will just be scratching the surface of this, but it is a fascinating surface nonetheless. Because if we have a look at their research, they put together research frameworks. You can apply for funding once they have the funding, but they've done anatomical analysis. And they've got their sort of like research policies and being responsible for their research. But yeah, anatomical analysis. So let's have a quick look at this. So, yeah, a bit more bleeding edge than your conventional male to female and female to male transition. And most definitely more controversial. And I'm definitely out there with this is one of the more controversial things that I have ever seen. Because they put a lot of thought into this. They have put a lot of thought into this. How tail morphology would work, how it requires prehensile mass, essentially joined to the sort of like ligaments and sacrum by the hips. Forelimbs, how that would work, and the formation of claws, how hind limbs would be formed. There's a lot here. So what I'm going to try and do is break it down. So, as aforementioned, I'm an undergraduate biochemist. Between lectures, I've been going over their white paper that they released. So the white paper being right here. This is just an overview, an anatomical study overview of the potential anthroanatomy that they propose could be possible. And if we have a quick look, yeah, I made quite a few notes. I made quite a few notes on one of the slightly older papers that they released. One titled The Strategic Roadmap for Research in Morphological Freedom. Because, yeah, there have been a few adaptations. There was quite a bit more controversy and skepticism regarding wings and fur. So this is the updated version of that. But we will be essentially flicking through the two, because this is the one that I'm more aware of, the strategic roadmap. But I do also want to raise the point that this one is incredibly important as well, because this is the more up-to-date version. But we'll be applying what I've become aware of in this to this, and have a good time. So, firstly, let's kick it off with the fact that they are explaining that key technologies already exist to achieve a freedom of form that people desire. Specific areas of research are already out there in the scientific world, and the anatomical objectives of transformations are possible, essentially leading to that tangible path that inspires confidence in the transformation. Yeah, again, I'm just utterly astounded by the fact that somebody took their time to go and do this. And I'm so excited. So if I do go quiet for a second, it's just because it's like brain overload, many things. They've highlighted areas of research that are especially important or likely to give tangible results there. I've also made my own notes, so we'll be flicking between the two. Head morphology is one of the newer states of interaction, so we'll have a quick look at that. Head morphology is the sophisticated arrangement of sensory organs and muscles, with these considerations making the head the most challenging part of the anatomy, because yes, that is where some of our most delicate parts of our body are. We've got our eyes, we have our brain, and the mouth, yeah, we need to eat. So, you don't want to screw that part of the mouth up. Because as stated here, muzzles would require lengthening of or substitution of the mandible and maxilla. That's these bits. Like right here, the maxilla and the mandible, right here, and they're extending it. They're extending it, and yeah, if that's not making you slightly go, how, what, yeah, it's a definite mind blow, so you have to think for a second. So, they've also considered elevated ears, how they're going to extend ear canals, and all this, and a short closed loop auditory signal repeater. I don't know what that is. I'm a biochemist, so I don't know what that is. We expect speech will not be negatively impacted other than modest changes in voice tone due to larger nasal sinuses, just due to the reverberation of the voice. But look at it. It's so detailed. It's so heckin' detailed. Yep, they go into full depth with the skull, muscles, and vocalization right here. I'm not going to be able to go into enough detail here and do it justice. It's just utterly astounding. The research questions and the approaches will be what we will be focusing on. So, research question: how can we reshape or replace the cranial bones, especially the maxilla and mandible? So this, I believe, was a point that was raised later on in some of their earlier stuff. So that would be down here. Gradual remodeling. Here it is. So yeah, some of the points, some of the takeaway points I had from this section is the fact that the small motorized agents that they are essentially proposing in one of their earlier sort of like papers, when that's being implanted into tissue to pull, push, inflate, or contract tissue over time, that's going to be very invasive, putting in small motorized agents into tissue. And the explanation they provided for sort of like altering the maxilla and mandible was essentially that of a dental sort of like straightening of the teeth, sort of like braces, but having that as braces for the whole head to move and adapt the skull. Yeah, move and adapt the skull, and then using motorized agents to push, pull, inflate, or contract tissue. Yeah, it really hurts my brain to think about how that could function. It's particularly interesting, but the main issues that I do see with it is immune system response. A lot of the things that are being pushed here, that are being sort of like looked at, you have to consider the immune system response, because the body doesn't want these things in it. It doesn't want to be changed. It likes to be the way it is. Homeostasis is an incredibly important part of the body, regulating a constant environment, having your body be as it is. Your body doesn't like change. As just a general thing, your body doesn't like change. It tends towards just being the same. It likes to have a consistent environment. So when you're putting in motorized agents, when you're trying to move around the structure of your cranial bones, of your canal, of your ear canals, of your jaw, how do you achieve that without coming a crop of the immune system? Absolutely fascinating. Genetic modification, as they say here, is of particular interest, which I will delve into in greater detail with my own notes. But yeah, these are things that have to be considered. You have to think outside the box when you think about things here, because yeah, look, tail morphology. Tails will require a long prehensile mass integrated or near the base of the spine, the coccyx. Okay, I'm following it so far. Additional skeletal changes may include the sacrum and dorsio-medial areas of the hips, with some conscious motor control of the tail, making it facile. So that would be like sensory innervation. Or in the instance up here, there was a mention of neuroprosthetics and neural interfaces. So this is sort of like the earlier version of tail morphology over here. As you can see, we've got sort of like how neuroprosthetics work and how that could be applied to ears, which is already been applied to with Charmander 2016, or tails as well, because I think neuroprosthetics has a better implementation for fursuit parts. I think that could be potentially of interest, but when you're actually trying to think of a physiological tail, humans had tails. We've got like a little sacrum bit here. We've got that bit here. I believe it's the coccyx. That is sort of like the little tail that became a nub. We no longer have that. But what they're essentially proposing is incorporating ligaments, incorporating is a difficult word to say. Bring that in closer. Coccygeal vertebrae and coccygeal vertebrae here and here to achieve a canine tail and a dragon tail. I mean, firstly, it's achievable. You can do it. I'm not saying it can't be done. It's bleeding edge, but with enough science and with enough money thrown at this, it's possible. But you have to think about how the world around us is designed. The chair I'm sitting in, it doesn't have a hole in the back. Where are you going to put a tail? I've got a little tail, just a little tail, which is like a little fursuit part. And whenever I sit down in the chair, I'm like, heck, I can't sit down properly. So, if you actually have a tail, the world, we're going to have to think about how the world around us changes, or doesn't change, to our adaptations, if this were to become commonplace. Because, yeah, although the science is there, and, again, bleeding edge, like, you're going to need to throw a lot of money at this to get it working, because I'll come back to that issue of the immune system being the main problem down here. In fact, it's one of my takeaways. One of my takeaway points from the early draft of their white paper is that the immune system response and genetic modification are two large areas of interest for improvement, because we're still somewhat limited with genetic modification, and the immune system response, you're going to have a massive immune system response if you don't do this right. You can massively screw this up, because you're trying to put things into your body when your body doesn't like change. I know I harp on about that a lot, but your body does not like change. It's just, it doesn't. And when you're trying to alter the muscles, when you're trying to alter the structure of your body, it doesn't like that. It doesn't like it at all. Forelimbs, again. This would be more of the genetic modification side of things, so we will pop up over to genetic modification in their slightly older thing, because, yeah, bioprinting is very important as well. I highlighted regenerative medicine here, because that's a particular interest to me. That's just a little point right there. What do we have? We have it right here, I believe. Where are you? Genetic modifications, here we go. So yeah, in their slightly older, sort of like paper, it states that gene editing rewrites instructions by which the body builds and maintains itself. Instructions is a very loose term. Yeah, it's DNA, but the DNA is the instruction of the cell, so I'll let instructions go there. Many genes affect multiple pathways, cell types, tissues, and organs. Don't you believe it? It really, seriously does. It's like that is an understatement. Understatement of the year. Many genes affect multiple pathways. Yes, it does. Massively. Heck, it does. I have to study this sort of thing. There are many pathways. Many complicated pathways. And that's where I think the limiting factor is. Designing systems that are orthogonal to existing ones. That go side by side. And tangential to each other. All these things. Whether they're running alongside each other or at crossroads to one another. Whatever you try and do to change the body, it's not going to have it. It's going to fight. It's going to resist. You need to use the body against itself to be able to achieve these things. And even use bacterial hosts. Use yeast hosts. Use other mammalian cells to achieve different products. And yeah, there's a lot of different gene treatments. I could do a whole series of videos on gene treatments. But what we've got right here is the introduction of new engineered DNA or RNA to cells. They can use vectors to deliver new information. I'm of the field that bacteriophage vectors with transfection was the wrong word there. Which transduction would be the best sort of like application of genetic modification. For those that are unaware, transfection just relates to mammalian cells, but using not bacteriophages or viruses, whereas transduction relates to bacteriophages and viruses for genetic modification, hence my correction there. But yeah, localization in injection with viral capsids with bacteriophages, as aforementioned. There's a lot here. There's a lot here, really, so much here. How can we modify or replace nails with claws? How can we add paw pads or modify existing skin to produce paw pads? How can we safely modify wrist and metacarpal size, and how can we safely change the number of digits as desired? That is the one that made me go, what? How? Because I like having 5 fingers. Having an extra finger, I feel, would be a nuisance. I already get a lot of ink over my hand when I'm writing, as it is. If I had an extra finger, that would be a problem. And then, changing the number of digits as desired, I don't want to lose a finger. I'm good, thank you. Again, I'm aware that this could be done safely, with the correct medical procedures, but I like my fingers. I suppose I'm not 100% on board with the transhumanism sort of like philosophy. Again, I find this fascinating, how people have gone into this. Personas must often include changes to hind limbs, involving claws, possible changes to the number of digits, and sometimes a transition from plantigrade to digitigrade locomotion. Yeah, plantigrade to digitigrade locomotion. That's breaking my brain. That's breaking my brain. And that's our current human profile. When we look at the canine and dragon profiles, that is a lot of modification to the bones and muscles. Again, you're going to struggle to achieve that without correct sort of like funding, without the research. The science can do it. The science is there. But that's going to take a lot of work. A lot of work, a lot of patience. Wings and flight drew particular ire. Yeah. Yeah, again, just thinking about the practicality of wings, right? If I can find a little, yeah, here we go. Think about the practicality of wings, right? So we've got human up here. That's completely fine. Anthro-flyer. So you've got wings. But if we think about just how the world around us is made, clothes, doors, locomotion, cars, buses, trains, all of these things are not adapted for this. You can change the human with the science, but changing the world around us and the ideologies of that world, that's incredibly difficult. Incredibly difficult. And with things like this, seeing adaptations like this, male to female and female to male transitions, they're already controversial. People are having to argue for their very existence on a day-to-day basis, which is incredibly stupid. Trans rights are human rights, and human rights are trans rights. The same heckin' thing. Sorry, angry rant, must not get into angry rant. Basically, is my whole thing when it comes to the whole trans argument, because it's not an argument. Trans people exist, and they're valid. But that's an aside on my point. That's already a controversial thing. Already, right there. And we've got this. We've got this right in front of us. Right here. This exists. As I said, anatomical studies. Freedom of Form Foundation. They're a real thing. You can go check it out. Link in the description below. But how are people going to look at people who have adapted themselves into an anthro individual? It's... people don't like change, and like the body, people don't like change. And like the body, people can get very violent to change. You can have an immune response, but you can also have a social response. Skin fur and people aren't used to seeing fursuiters, let alone people with full, thick hair and thick skin. Or sorry, thin skin in this instance. Because yes, humans have thick skin. Of course we do. Skin being the most important organ of the body, but I won't get into A-level science. But yeah. Full white paper, again, I'll link that to the description below. I agree with a lot of the things here in the anatomical study descriptions of potential anthroanatomy. Or to a greater point, the one that I have read in greater detail, the strategic roadmap for research in morphological freedom. I agree with a lot of the things here. I can see it being possible. The science is there. And with further research, this could become commonplace. What I'm essentially saying is do people want it to become commonplace? Will people become accepted for it being commonplace? The world of body modification is already controversial. And when you see things like this, integrating neuroprosthetics with other methods like genetic modifications, bioprinting, remodeling, integrating fur into human skin, and tails, and wings, and altering the bone structure of the face. Considering all of this, and the fact that people don't like change, is this the sort of thing that people want? Again, one of my takeaway points here, transhumanism and the development of procedures requires persistent public relations, as it's a radical concept to the general public. I don't know what else I can say. It's a radical concept. It's a bleeding edge, controversial topic. But from what I've read, the science agrees with it. It's possible. You can achieve it given the correct funding, given the correct research, overcoming immune responses. Because, in my opinion, that's the main hurdle, overcoming the immune response. Because grafting tissues from one human to another is already difficult enough. When you're trying to graft genetically modified tissue, or just changing the body, that's even more difficult. But yeah, I think I'll just leave it there. Because this diagram, tail anatomies, sums it up for me. You can do it. You can do the changes. But the world around you might not change with you. And I think I'll leave it there for your consideration, because I heavily recommend go out and read this paper, read this white paper, look at the Freedom of Form Foundation, have a dig around, look at the news and opinions, look at their research. You can have a look at how you want to get involved if this is your sort of thing. It's utterly fascinating. At the end of the day, I think it's possible, but the world doesn't like change. Unfortunately, it does come to that shill bit of the video. If you did enjoy this video on transhumanism and the Freedom of Form Foundation, leave a like, comment, and subscribe. If not, that's perfectly fine as well. Those sorts of things can go and be left behind, much like the archaic ideas that change is not good. Because, yes, male to female and female to male transitions is change. And you've observed how controversial that is. It shouldn't be, because people have the right to be able to alter their bodies when it comes to gender. Anger. But I'll get into that in a separate video, because that's this whole thing. But yes, apologies for getting a bit quiet and angry there. But when we talk about transhumanism and the Freedom of Form Foundation and enabling freedom of one's physical form, I keep going back to the fact that the world is a scary place. The world does not like change. The world does not like difference. Trans individuals are already struggling to get their own recognition as valid people, because they are. They are valid. My concern is that the Freedom of Form Foundation hasn't considered that the world doesn't like change. But I suppose we'll see. Hopefully the world will surprise me and actually be a nice place, but I don't hold out too much hope. But yes, thank you once again for watching our videos. I hope you have a wonderful evening, and good night.